As developers, we know understanding an application is not simple. Why? Because a code base is not just a collection of source files, config files, scripts, and others. To understand an application, you should know how these components work with each other, which is complex and interesting because it might change depending on the framework you are using. Also, there are multiple ways to understand your application and its code base. You can read or browse through it, execute it, and there are many other ways. What are we missing here? Did you ever wish of accessing a logical view of your application? I mean, what if you could access how your code base looks from the viewpoint of the framework you are using, such as all the endpoints for your API calls, auto-wire relations for your Spring components, database column mapping, and much more? Do you think such a logical view can help you understand your application better? How? That's a big question. I do not have answer to that question, but our speaker today definitely does. Hi everyone, thanks for joining in for another episode of IntelliJ IDEA Livestream. I'm your host Mala Gupta, and today I'm pleased to welcome Siva. Hey
Thank you,
Siva,
Mala.
it's a pleasure to have you present with us today.
Thanks, Mala. Thanks everyone for joining today.
So, Siva, so for anyone who doesn't know who Siva is, he is, first of all, an amazing person. My colleague at JetBrains. It's always a pleasure to work with him. We talk about a lot of things day in and day out. Oh, Siva, this is not our regular call, so I need to add more details. Sorry about that. Of course, Siva is a very well known expert when it comes to Spring Boot. He's authored multiple books. He's a long-time developer. He blogs often and also shares his knowledge via videos. So, Siva, I have a question for you.
Sure, shoot out.
So we were discussing about this structure view when we were talking the other day, and I want to ask you, what is it that you are excited about in this view window?
So when I first saw the logical structure view, I'm really excited to see the code base from a different point of view than just a mere collection of classes, interfaces, and things like that. And then as I explore more and more, there are few more features that I really like because they are going to help me to understand the code base in much simpler way. So I'm going to talk about all of them in detail in this session now.
So I guess you dodged the question. So it is not about one feature; it's about the overall, like the combination of all the features, which is great. So and that's great as well. So Siva, before I let you take the stage, let me share a quick housekeeping details for everyone who's watching our session today. So everyone watching, please use the YouTube chat to post your question. We would try to answer your question as you post them. We also have volunteer from the IntelliJ IDEA development team. And this is the most important question. Yes, the session is being recorded and we'll host it to IntelliJ IDEA's YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, now is the time to do so. And if you like today's session, which I'm very sure you would do, please do not miss to like the video. And with that, Siva, I will let you move forward with your session and have fun. I'll be backstage.
Thank you, Mala. Mala, can you share my screen? Okay. Uh, I hope you can see my screen here. Let me move this window. Okay. Can you all see my screen? I hope so. So today I'm going to talk about a new feature that is introduced in IntelliJ IDEA 2024.3, which is the redesigned structure tool window. But before getting into talk about the structure tool window enhancement, let us talk about some context, why we need to redesign this structure tool window and what we are trying to achieve. So if we take a step back and think about what we do on a daily basis as a developers, what we do. So we write code, we read code, we debug, we test, and then we upgrade our code bases. So we do a lot of things, right? So our IDEs, IntelliJ IDEA, helps in doing all these activities. Like you can use IntelliJ IDEA's excellent editor support with fantastic auto completion, and then there is a wonderful refactoring support. You can debug, and you can do all these activities. And along these lines, also in the long run, you might want to upgrade your application libraries, and then you might want to look at what are the security vulnerabilities. Are there any security vulnerabilities in the libraries that you are using? So IntelliJ IDEA already scans your application, indexes the whole code base, and try to help you as much as possible. But again, when we think about all these activities as a developers we do, but these are like the entire project life cycle, but we are going to spend usually more time reading the code base, understanding the code base compared to other activities. So how IntelliJ IDEA helps you in doing that? So that is the question. So now let me ask you a question. Like if you join a new project, let's say the project is already started a year ago or a couple of years ago, and it's already being developed, and then you join the team. So how do you start understanding the existing application? How do you approach? So Mala, can you uh, ask the question for our viewers? How do they approach understanding their code bases? I would like to see how they do it, and then see how I approach it.
So, everyone, we have an interesting quiz in this session. So, if you could scan the QR code that you can see on your screen right now, or use the link menti.com and enter the code, you will be able to participate in the quiz. And coming up, the first question is, how do you understand a new Spring or Jakarta EE project? So we have listed multiple options here, which is viewing the build files, reading application configuration file, browsing through business logic, or the most interesting one, asking the AI assistant. So, of course, um, oh, so we are already getting the answers. So, browsing through business logic, a lot of people do that, which is interesting. Siva, feel free to comment on what you like. I think no one is reading build scripts these days.
So, yeah, it is interesting to see how others approach doing that. So, while others are sharing their point of view, let me talk about how I usually approach understanding an existing application. So, if I join a new project, the first thing I would do is just take a quick glance at the build scripts. Like, okay, what kind of a frameworks we are using? Is it Spring Boot or anything else? I see what kind of libraries are we using, what ORM frameworks we are using for data access, what kind of caching libraries we are using. So I want to get a bird eye view of what frameworks we are using, what libraries we are using, what kind of a security we are implementing, that kind of thing. We don't understand everything, but we get a big picture of what frameworks, what technologies we are using. And then I'll usually, once I figure out what kind of a frameworks we are using, I step into understanding the key configuration of the application. Let's take an example of a Spring Boot application. So how do you define the beans? Are you using XML based configuration? I hope nobody is using XML these days, but and how do we configure security? Are we using OAuth based security? Are we using session based security? Or how we are talking to the database? So these are the key aspects of an application. So that's what I would explore next. And then I step into actual business logic. Okay, what are the use case we are handling, and what kind of a business logic, and what is the process flow? So that is how I usually approach in understanding the code bases. But again, if you take a look at this whole process, some of these are like a one-time activities. Like if you take a look at the build process, it is like, okay, once we look at the kind of libraries and frameworks we are using, that is mostly one-time activity. And again, we spend the rest of the time, most of the time, exploring how our application is configured, or you are going to configure more things as we develop the application. And then we end up spending more time on understanding the business logic or how each component in our application is interacting with the other components. That's how we are going to spend as a developers most of our time. And again, when we talk about reading code or understanding code, we need to again think about it's not a simple act of looking at the classes and then okay, which component is interacting with each other components, but also we need to look at the application from the framework point of view, because these days we are using frameworks which take opinionated view and automatically configure a lot of things on behalf of you. And when you want to do something, you also need to have a view of what is already taken care by the framework. So it is equally important to understand how your application is configured, how you are using what are the framework. In this case, we are looking at a Spring Boot application, right? So we need to understand how our Spring Boot application is configured. So this is all as part of understanding the code base, reading the code base. Now, once we understand the whole bigger picture, it is like sometimes it feels like we are putting all that cognitive load on our minds. For example, if you have to do a lot of activities in a day-to-day life, you might remember, okay, I need to do these four things regarding the office work, you need to do these two things in my personal life. So like this, if you have a bunch of these tasks and if you have to remember all of them in your mind, it's kind of exhausting. It's a cognitive load. Whereas if I take a simple pen and paper and note it down, I can strike off, okay, these three things are not priority for today, and only we are going to do only these two things for today, something like that. If I offload that cognitive load to something else, it is much more simpler and lightweight from the cognitive load point of view. The same thing applies to reading code base. When I say we need to understand the framework's perspective, most of the times we read about, okay, what this annotation does and how one component interacts with other components. Sometimes we make a mental model of all the object structure and everything. And again, I feel like instead of me remembering all these details, if I offload that mental model to IDE, that would be good. Now I can just take a look at this view and I can understand how these things are glued together rather than me remembering and then keeping all that knowledge in my mind. So that is exactly what we are trying to do with this redesigned structure tool window. So now
So,
here,
Siva, before you hop on to the structure tool window, I would like to show you the answers from the question that you asked. If perhaps you could use that in your session. So most people, they browse through the business logic of their code base application, and this is how they understand the code base. Just one mention that they're using build tools. One mention that they're using the app, reading through the application configuration file, and just one is using the AI assistant, which is good and bad. So
I'm
I'll let you
I'm a bit
use it.
surprised. I
Yes.
kind of hope many people, not many, but at least a significant portion would say AI assistant or some AI tool. I hope.
Mm.
Okay.
Right.
So
So with that, I'll be backstage and I'll let you use this information the way you want to, and I will add your screen back to the stream.
cool. So here we have a Spring Boot application. It's a simple blog application which contains both a REST API and also a web application which does a typical blog features like you can see list of articles and posts, comments, and all these things. But the thing that we are going to explore here, so how do we approach understanding this code base? As I already mentioned, we are using Spring Boot framework, which auto configures a lot of things for you. So you don't have to worry about this. But if you want to understand how these things work, our redesigned structure tool window helps you a lot. And here if you take a look at this, so before coming to that point, now typically when we look at a class, right? So what we see here, it's a class. It has some methods and things like that. And again, if you take a look at this controller, it will have a bunch of classes and then methods. And but these are not simple methods, or these are not simple classes. That might look like it's a another class, but from the framework point of view, it's a controller. So it has a role to play. It's not a normal class. Similarly, you have services, you have repositories, you have entities. So when you look at the project structure, you see a physical layout of your project code. And again, similarly, when you look at physical view, which used to be the view in the structure tool window before IntelliJ introduces this logical view. This is the way you see a class. If you open any class, irrespective of whether it is a controller, service, or whatever, it is how we used to display. It is fine to see all these methods and everything, but it doesn't reveal what they are actually. So this is where the logical structure view comes into picture. So right now I have a Spring Boot application and I open this post REST controller. And here in the logical structure view, it is showing we have a bunch of API endpoints, and we are injecting some of the other Spring components into this controller. So compared to this physical view, which doesn't reveal anything about our application component that we are currently using, this logical view shows what kind of a component you are viewing. So this is how it displays. So let me enlarge this. So here in the REST controller, it is showing all these API endpoints. And here you can take a glance at, okay, what are the URL patterns for this one? What kind of a HTTP method for this particular API endpoint? And also you can take a look at what are the return types for this REST controller. So you can quickly navigate through them. You can click on this and then it will automatically focus in the editor window. And you can also see what other bean dependencies you have for this controller, and it is auto-wide into this one. So not only that, you can also dig into those dependencies as well. Like here we have post service injected into controller, and again it is showing what kind of a scope it is. Is it a singleton pin? Is it a prototype pin? So you can see that. And here you can explore more details about the post service as well. Again, here you can expand this AutoWires and then see what other Spring components are injected into this post service. Here we have repositories, and we have event publishers, and we have application properties. So these are all the components that we are injecting into post service. So that way you can dig through all the component hierarchy and then see how your application is composed of various Spring components. And again, here you can see in post service, we have all these bunch of methods here. And if you click on any of them, it will open that particular component in the editor. So when you on this particular editor, when you open any component, it is going to automatically show in the logical structure here. So again, if you expand, you can see post repository. And also here, when you view a Spring Data repository, here we are using Spring Data JPA, and it will show for what entity this repository is created for. Here you can see this post repository is created for post. And also here, if we are Spring Data repositories inherit a lot of methods from its base classes or interfaces. Here we are extending from JPA repository, and which provides all CRUD operations, pagination related methods and everything. So here we have broadly categorized them into finder methods, count methods, and update methods, modify and delete methods. So just to give a categorization of different kinds of methods. So here, some of them are created by us, and you can also see some of them are inherited. So here you can see if they are inherited from the super interfaces. Here you can see this one is inherited from JPA repository. So like that, you can see all these methods and from which component you inherited. So you get this complete logical view of your Spring Boot application. And also here you can see, you can if you go and if you want to invoke, you can invoke this particular Spring Data JPA repository finder either using this, or it also provides that facility using some actions here. I'll talk about actions later here. So far, do you have any questions regarding what you seen in this structure
Um,
tool?
Hi,
Are there
Siva.
any?
No, there are no questions. There was just one comment by Cliff, and he was asking that he's not able to see the endpoints for Quarkus app. So, which I mentioned that that support is still in works. So,
So right now, the support is available for Spring and Jakarta EE, but we are going to provide the similar support for other frameworks like Quarkus and Micronaut also. They are in work in progress. But right now, we have support for Spring Boot and Jakarta EE.
I'll let you move forward with your session.
Okay. So now that we have seen, have you ever wondered, like when you start a Spring Boot application, it has auto configuration mechanism, and it automatically auto configure so many beans depending on various factors. Like if you add a starter, it will identify some classes and then automatically register the beans. And similarly, if you have some jars, and based on the availability of certain classes, it also registers some beans. So things like that, it will do all this auto configuration mechanism, one of its core feature of Spring Boot. So now, if you ever want to learn what are all the components that are registered using the auto configuration mechanism, so here I opened this blog application, which is typically the main entry point class for a Spring Boot application. And here in the logical view, you can see auto configurations. And if you expand the node auto configurations, you can see all the available auto configuration classes. And also, if you click on, for example, here, if I open, let's say, cache auto configuration, okay. So here you can see what are the components that are going to be created using this cache auto configuration. So here there are two beans that are going to be registered. Again, this is conditionally. And similarly, if you have if you are using some database support, you can see what are the other beans that you are going to register. So things like that, you can take a look at this structure, and then you can see each auto configuration class, what kind of a beans they are auto configuring at a glance. You don't have to navigate through the code. From here, you can take a quick view of which auto configuration class is trying to register the pins. But here, one thing to understand is this is the static view right now, because we are not yet starting the application. Then we can't determine whether a certain bean is registered or not, because it all depends on various factors. If you have a class, then only this gets registered. If you configure a certain property, maybe some beans gets registered. So things like that. So now, if you want to understand that, let's start our application, and it's going to give a indicator that, okay, this pin is registered, this pin is not registered, because certain conditions are not met. So now, let me, here you can see it will show this green check mark saying that this condition is matched. But however, conditional on being, this condition is not met. So like this, it will give this indicator saying that, okay, this bean is not registered or this condition is not met. Similar to this auto configuration, if we have our own application configuration, we can also see this. So here I have my app config, which is a Spring Boot configuration class. And here I have conditionally registered some bean. So here I have email service, which is an interface, and then I have two different implementations. I have some real email service and console logging email service, and then I register the beans based on a conditional property. If this property value is console, then only register this bean. Otherwise, if it is real or if it is missing any value, then register this bean. So something like this, I have my own configuration. When you start your application, you can see, okay, this is matched with the current application configuration. So this is registered and this is not registered. You can see these indicators and then understand. So this is another nice feature. Like you might not use it on a daily basis, but if you ever have to debug any issue, then especially if you are conditionally registering different types of implementations, or if you are dynamically using some profiles or something like this is really comes handy. So any other questions regarding this one? Conditional bean.
No, Siva, we don't have any more questions now.
Okay, fine.
There were a
So
lot of
another.
comments. Sorry, there were a couple of comments, and Marit is already asking. Marit and Anton, they're answering the questions. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So another thing that I really find challenging and typically when we are working on a code base that uses event-based communication, I find a little bit difficult because in a flow, you might be doing some business logic and then you are publishing an event. And then somewhere else, you are consuming that event and then you are processing based on what are the business logic you need to handle, but there is no direct. For example, here if you take a look at our REST controller, this is a direct dependency from in the handler method. You are calling directly, so if you want to navigate, you can navigate like this. But when it comes to event based communication, you reach to a point where you just publish and then that's the end of this flow, and then asynchronously somewhere else it gets picked up and then processed by other handlers. So in those situations, how do you understand the code base? How do you get to know who are published? Maybe you come across on a different direction, like you are trying to fix some issue or you are trying to enhance some logic in the consumer, where you don't know who is publishing this data, which component is publishing this event, and you need to either fix some issue or enhance the logic. So how do you know which other component is publishing that event? That might be maybe different places, right? So I think, Mala, could you ask this question and see how people do it? I'm interested to understand.
So, everyone watching, we have an interesting scenario here. So, the question, so as Siva mentioned, so we have an issue with figuring out where are the producers, where are the consumers for in your code base for your application. So, the question is, how many times in your life have you been successful in remembering this data? Um, where the producers are and where the consumers are, because async programming is interesting, as we all know. It's very easy to debug. Siva, am I being sarcastic enough? No, I don't think so. So so yes, we know that we should be using more of virtual threads so that we don't need async programming, because a lot of time we could kind of do away with that, but we still need async programming because we cannot use virtual threads in all the cases. So, Siva, I think not a lot of people are working with async programming. What do you do in that case?
Lucky people, lucky people. So,
That
so this
that's a good
is
way to put.
so if asynchronous programming is really good fit because you can decouple some of the logic. You don't have to do everything in a synchronous fashion. You can trigger an event and then let other processors consume that event and then process it. But again, with the benefits, you also get this challenge of understanding who is publishing the data, especially if you are working on both sides. Probably you know it, but if different teams are working in the same code base, somebody in some other module might be publishing it and you don't fully understand that. So I know most of us use the one uh, hammer. We have control shift F and then sets the entire code base and then try to see is it where the other team is publishing this event. So, but there is with this redesign structure tool window, there is a much simpler way. Uh, for example, here in our post service, when we
Uh,
are creating a, sorry,
Siva, before you go
okay,
on to your screen, so I just want to share the results of the question that we asked. So we have 6 responses. So 2 people mentioned that they've never remember um, how this happens and the count, and we have two which says 5 or more, and two another which says 10 times or more. So I think we have a great audience here, and they know where the producers and consumers are. So I think what we'll talk about next is catering to the other set of people, right? Or, oh my God. So we have really intelligent audience here, because now 3 people are saying that they remember it more than 10 times in their whole life. And with that, I'll let you move forward with your session. Thanks everyone for answering. So we have 4 people now. Great.
Mala, can you add my screen? Okay, cool. So here we have a use case where in our post REST controller, when we are creating a new post, we are using post service. In the post service, here once we create a post, we are publishing an event. So here, if you take a look at uh, this component, if you open this, here you can see we are publishing an event which is post published event, and this is shown under this publisher node. And when you look at this event publishing node, you can also see who are consuming this event. So here we have two event listeners. So one is to say send an email to somebody, and another one is to capture analytics and then publish it to some persistent storage. So this way, even though you have this event mechanism, and from this code base you can clearly see, okay, this is where we are publishing this event, and we have multiple listeners, and based on your interested area, you can go ahead and explore. If you are working on some analytics related one, you can understand, okay, this is where I need to check. Or if you are sending an email and then there is some issue, you can just check which are all the listeners that are there for a specific event. So this also works in the other direction. Let's go to blog event listener. So when you are at blog event listener, here you can see this listener node, and it shows what kind of events you are listening. In this case, we only have a listener for post published event. You can also see who is publishing this event. So right now, only one component is there that is publishing this post published event. So this is where we can identify this missing link in our code base. Okay, who is publishing and who is consuming. So this is one of my favorite feature. Otherwise, you would have to resort, okay, if it is a smaller code base, probably you know it, but imagine There are projects which are being built over the years, and then you have many components where you are publishing events and then consuming it, and you will end up doing Control Shift F and search everywhere, and then try to see is this where really you are consuming the events, and this is where you are actually publishing the event. But with this feature, it becomes really simple to understand who is publishing and who is consuming. So this is one of my favorite feature. Also, I would like to ask our audience, when you are working on a large code base, especially if it is being developed over the years, many years, and have you ever been in a situation where you see some class is not being used, but you are not 100% sure, and you are not comfortable deleting it because you don't know fully whether it is being used or not. And most of us try to be safe and we don't touch it. So, have you ever been in that situation? I have been in that situation many times because uh, we are using frameworks like Spring, and which does much reflection magic, and we never know where this component is being used. Especially if it is a library, you cannot fully know that. But if you are working on a application, entire application, then you can understand that. But we try to be safe, and then we leave the things as they are without removing them, just to be safe. But here, if you take a look at our code base, if you let us look at, so assume we are in a situation where um, earlier there is Amazon SES service that we have been using to send out emails. Whenever some interesting thing happened, you want to send out email, assume this is what we have been using. But then we wanted to provide more flexibility and then use different services, so then we created this email service, and we have multiple implementations. There is a real email service, probably using some third party SendGrid or something like that, to send out the emails. Or for testing or local development, there is another implementation. Just when you send an email, you are just logging to the console. And we are using now email service, and depending on which one you configured, one of these components will be used. But you leave it as it is, and when you start the application, it is going to create this bean unnecessarily. But as I mentioned, if you are working in a large code base, you try to be not to take risk and then leave out because you are not 100% sure. But now if you take a look at this structure, you can see where it is being injected. Now it shows it is not injected into any component. So you don't have to manually search, am I using this anyway, something like that. Instead, you can rely on the logical structure view to identify is this component is being used anywhere in the application. So this is a simple way to identify unused code, and then you can probably remove this feature, this component, because it's not being used anywhere. But again, be cautious about when you are working on a complete code base, then you can understand this and take the decision. But if you are building a common library or something like that, then there could be users outside of the component, so you can't delete that. But when you are working on a complete business application, yeah, this really comes handy to identify dead code and then remove it. So now we have seen how we can represent our code base using different, different components, and most of us build a data-driven application. So here again, let's take this, uh, take a repository, and let me, and this is the entity that is created. So here you can also see all the mappings of that entity. Like here you have a post entity which is configured a JPA entity and which is inheriting some of the properties from the base entity, and then these are the column mappings you have, property to column mappings, and also associations. So here you have post which is having the association many to one association to created by which is a many to one association to the user entity, and also you have referenced by which other JPA entities are referencing this post entity. You can see these details again, and also you can see what are the repositories created for this particular entity, and also if you create any DTO projections or DTO records for this particular entity, you can see all that information as well. So this is what gives a logical structure view of the application components. So imagine just looking at this post repository, or for example, looking at this post as a simple class with a bunch of setters and getters. It doesn't reveal much of the role it is playing in the application. Whereas with the logical view, you are seeing this is a JPA entity mapped to posts table, and these are the column mappings we have, and it is associated to user entity with a many to one relation, and you can even explore further, but also you can know which other entities are referencing this, and what other DTOs you have created for this, what projection you have created for this post entity. So this information gives a logical view of the components. So I find this really useful when you want to understand the code base from the framework point of view, not just as a mere classes and setters and getters and what are the methods we have. So this reveals a logical view of the application. And in addition to these, we also typically do certain actions while we are exploring our application code base. We also try to perform some actions. For example, when we are looking at a post repository, uh, this is one approach. Here you can click on this, and then you can invoke the uh, Spring data repository methods, and then you can see the data. So similar feature you can also do uh, from here. So here there is some issue with the icon display, but here also you can click on this icon and then perform this action. So this is, suppose you are exploring the code base and then you want to quickly run this and then see, you can click on this and then provide the inputs and then execute the query and then see. So similar use case you can also do from the repositories as well. For example, let's go where we injected this. So we injected this in our post REST controller. So when we are viewing this, any REST controller or web API endpoints, you can select any of this and then click on the icon, and it will take you to this HTTP console where you can call this and then check the response. So this is really handy when you are trying to do some actions and you don't have to manually go navigate through the code base and do it. Instead, you can do it right from the logical structure here. And also, when we are exploring our code base from about, let's take a look at web app here. When we are viewing a web controller, not a REST API controller, when we are viewing a web controller, here you can see what endpoints, I mean, request handlers we have, and it does not. So here you can see what is the view it is going to render. So if it is a REST API, you can see what type of response type it is going to return. But if it is a web controller, uh, you can also see the view names it is going to render here. Of course, if there is a conditional logic, it will show multiple of these possibilities also. But this is also some information that gives more context. Okay, I am in this particular API endpoint, and what kind of a view it is going to be displayed, and things like that. So these are the context relevant actions that you can perform right from the logical view. Of course, you can do it from here as well. But while exploring, if you want to quickly check out what it is going to do, you can do right from here. And I think this action support is not yet publicly released. It is going to be released soon. But this is one thing that is really exciting. Just imagine right now there is only support for a couple of features like invoking the REST API endpoints or invoking Spring Data Repository methods, things like that. But imagine there is going to be more support for other type of files or components. For example, if uh, we are using a build tool like Gradle or Maven, right? So one of the action you probably do is building a Docker image out of your Spring Boot application. So imagine if you open a if you open the pom.xml and see an action here, just click on it to build a Docker image. Just I'm giving an example here. That feature is not there, but imagine doing that, because these are the actions that you typically do with Spring Boot application. So this is where these context relevant actions comes into picture and then provide a lot of convenience. So that is how we are trying to provide more logical view of the application than just showing it as a mere classes and methods and simple physical representation. So that is what we have been seeing earlier, and now it is showing more of a logical structure. Instead of this, we are having more of a framework point of view and what role each of these component are playing. So that is how this logical structure help us to explore the code base, understand the components, how each component interacts with each other, and things like that. So any questions on this features?
Hey, Siva. No questions.
Okay, cool. So that's all I have. But I would like you to try out this, explore the redesigned structure tool window, and maybe we can ask Mala. We can ask what
Okay,
other
I
features our audience would like to see.
yes, I thought you were talking about the question specific on the feature that you just mentioned. So there are a couple of comments I would just mention. So Anton added that the information about DTO and projections, they are available only with the JPA Buddy plugin. So if you want to add more to it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the plugin, my favorite plugin that I already always have in my Ultimate Edition. So I don't even think of it as a separate thing. It feels to me like it's already available. But yeah, good point. Maybe somebody haven't installed, and then maybe where is this feature? Siva demonstrated it, but I don't see it. So yeah. Remember
But we
that the TTO and projections that you see and the logical structure, you will get to see that once you have this JPA Buddy plugin installed.
but we
Thanks, Anton.
already have but we already have the JPA Buddy plugin bundled with the IntelliJ IDEA now. So unless anyone
Yes,
is using an older version of IntelliJ IDEA, I guess, but then they would not be able to view the logical structure window. So
yeah, yeah.
okay, and on that note, I want to show the next question that we have. So, everyone watching, you already viewed the features that are there in the logical structure window. So, what else would you want to see in the logical structure window? Because, as Siva mentioned, so this is the team is all working on it, and more features are in the pipeline. On that, Siva, on that note, what are the other features you know that already are in works?
So one of the most commonly used feature is Spring Security in Spring boot-based applications. So a team is already working on providing some security-related view of the components, and also there are more features coming on. But I don't want to spoil some of them. But we got some feedback from some of the people who are using the logical structure window, and then suggested some of the improvements and new features. So the team is working on those, and I would request the people to use it, explore it, and try to see how you like it, or you want to see any more features, or you want to change anything the way it is being displayed here. So we welcome your feedback, and we try to improve this information.
And absolutely, as Siva mentions, your feedback would really help the developers at JetBrains to work better and include the features that you want, the users of this feature wants. And also, if you are watching this session as a recorded session, not right now, then you can use our UTrack application to log in the features that you would like to see in this window. Right, Siva?
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I guess if, would you like to comment on any of the feature requests that you can see on your screen right now? So we have 7
Uh,
responses.
yes, I can see web support and request headers. Yeah, that's one good request headers. Synchronized HTTP method, user authentication, security. Yeah, cool. We have a HTTP method. We already showing this.
Yes.
Um, and web support, that is something I think it is not yet being worked on. Right now, our
Mhm.
focus is more on the backend framework support.
Mhm.
Request header, this is one interesting thing. But it would be available at runtime only, not at the design time. So
Mhm.
but that is also an interesting thing. If you want to enhance this information when you are running the application, that is something probably we can tackle. So yeah, cool.
Also, I guess everyone who is entering all this information, if they could open a UTrack ticket and enter additional information, I think that would be a great help to the developers who are working on the features. And do you have any other things to show or sorry?
So yeah, that's all I have. But just to give some closure to it, like why do we even bother to build this logical view? So that is an interesting part that I came to know, because we have our our JetBrains AI assistant. So sorry, we can ask our AI assistant to explain features. For example, if I want to understand what we are doing here, we can ask AI assistant uh, and explain code, what our actions we can do. In order to do that, it needs to have some context. If we don't provide enough context about, okay, what is the models we have here, what is the views we have here, that kind of information, if we don't provide, our AI assistant might not be able to give proper information to us. So our IntelliJ IDEA already has all this information, and we have enhanced this AI assistant to consider all that information and then provide a best possible explanation to this. So that is when the team realized, okay, we have already information about the framework and how each component interacts with each other, how the whole application works. It is we are giving all that information to AI tools, And what about giving it to the developers also? Because that is the information that really helps people to understand. So that's when the thought came up, and then after a lot of thought, this is seems the right place to provide not only physical view, enhance this with a logical structure view. So, like this is some background information how this feature even came up. This started with AI assistant, and then we have been doing a lot of R&D and then identify all the information. We pull that and then provide this information to the developers also. So, yeah, little bit of background I would like to share.
Yes, and I also shared the link to the blog post that you already have, which covers this part as well, like how this feature kind of branched out from the developers working on in making AI assistant more give more relevant answers. So that is interesting. That is interesting. Okay, and on that note, I would like to thank everyone watching the session today. I hope you like the session. Thanks for participating, asking questions, and also answering questions. We would love your feedback on the session. It really helps us to plan our future sessions. You can scan the QR code that you can see on your screen right now, or you can use the link which is displayed on your screen. And yes, for more information, if you want to follow what we are doing at JetBrains about on IntelliJ IDEA, you can see all the social links on the screen right now, and also socials for Siva. You can ping him and connect him. So Siva would be able to kind of talk more about it, how to connect with him.
Sure. Cool.
And yes, thanks everyone for watching. And yes, do not miss to subscribe to our channel. Um, okay. So there's two hello coming in. So there's one by Simon. He says, thank you for the nice presentation. And there's Victor. He says, thank you. Um, so Simon, hey Simon, he is another great person. Way too late. I think you can watch the recorded session. Thank you for joining in. And there's another. Okay, so there's a comment by Jaya Vishnuram, and he's saying he's installed JP Buddy. I think I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, so I think we are done with the comments. Siva, if you have any closing comments.
So, thanks again for joining this stream, and I hope you love this new redesigned logical view. And please explore it, give us feedback, let us know what more features you want to see in this logical structure window. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one. So there's another thank you. So as we are about to close the stream, a lot of thank you messages coming. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. And do not miss that we have another great session lined up on Thursday next week, which is 19th of December. We'll be talking about GraalVM and IntelliJ IDEA by Fabio from Oracle. So until then, bye-bye.